Okay, so this is video number 4, and what I want to talk about in this video is accessing the heart in waking life. Now, it's one thing to move into the heart when we are practicing the twilight awareness, and again, this is it's actually I think, a very important uh, spiritual practice is to practice this twilight of awareness of moving into the heart. But I don't want you to get the impression that it's limited only to this time in between sleep and waking. In fact, any time during the waking world, I think it's very important to know that every situation that you're in is an opportunity to practice. But we're going to do it in a little different way in this regard. And by the way, this is now the material that we started getting into in our second workshop session for those of you who are not able to be there. So when we're accessing the heart in the waking awareness, we're also adding to our spiritual practice time, because practicing moving into the heart in our waking consciousness reinforces moving into the heart in our twilight awareness as well. Now, this movement into the heart is I can't even begin to describe for you, and this is something you can only experience for yourself. I can't begin to describe for you how important this is, how much it changes the world around you when you move into the heart with intentionality. And in order to do this, we're going to do, we're going to really simplify it, because you want to have this be accessible in any situation. And when you can access it, you may find that any situation can be transformed as you do this with intention, which means you always have an option, no matter what situation you find yourself, to not be the victim, but to enter into this heart space, which changes it in a very creative manner. So all we're going to do in this case is we're not going to practice the bubble of moving out and moving back in so that now we're inside the heart. We're simply going to move our attention with this process of gentle breathing / non-breathing, and allowing our attention to move into this heart, so that what we're doing is we're just as gently as we can and with as much loving care as we can. We're breathing into this heart, not oxygen or air, not breathing into our lungs, but into the heart center. Energy, light, love, peace, joy. So it's as if this is now coming into the very center of our being. Breathing ever so gently. Paying attention to what is happening in the heart center. Again, for me, that's a warmth that starts to happen. It's an expansion of the heart, even a sense of joy. What I hope you will find is that when you do that, the mind chatter, which is associated with the brain and with thinking, and of course the locus of thinking is the brain, as we move from there down into the heart, that mind chatter begins to fall away. And now we are entering into a different space that, because it is not associated with the words, the constant narrative of this inner voice, and instead we're moving away from that into the heart, there's an experience of stillness. And as I'm speaking to you at this moment, I'm actually doing this right now. And that stillness then begins to reach outward and sort of permeate the world around us, so that now we're also beginning to break down the barriers of isolation between our body and the world around us. So that stillness moves outward and also breathes inward. So we are now bridging the inner and the outer worlds. When this happens, your experience of the world is transformed. So I would suggest that you practice that. Maybe even go back through this video as I'm talking it through, or come up with your own language or metaphor or method. But to move into that space, and then what we did in the workshop was to go outside while still in that heart center, in that stillness, and see what the difference was. How did the world change as a result of that experience? And it was really, we didn't do it for very long. This was, if we did it for 10 minutes, I'd be surprised. But people came back and talked about their experience, and some of the things that they said was they noticed that their other senses were enhanced. So for some people, it was hearing was enhanced, or their sense of smell was enhanced, or some people talked about really being at peace. Now think about that. Think about how remarkable it would be to be at genuine peace as you move through this world. You'd be far less reactive. You'd be far more open to all kinds of guidance, and you'd begin to realize that the world, because there is not this definitive barrier between our inner world and our outer world, you would begin to realize that there's communication happening across those two realities all the time. So that the world now is becoming alive. And when you're aware of that, then you, in a sense, become alive too, because now this is a whole different dimension of being. One person said that he noticed that the fear dropped away. Now, that's such a profound understanding. Because fear is often associated with our narrative about the world. As I mentioned in a previous video, that this narrative of the world is one in which we are separate from the world, and therefore the world has the ability to do us in, or hasten our demise, or whatever, or to harm us, or to cause us pain. But when you move into this space in waking consciousness, then the world is not the enemy anymore. The world becomes a garden in which it's a garden that is full of wonder every moment. And so there can be this sense of, like a child almost, a sense of joyful discovery that you begin to recover when fear begins to drop away. And that's the advantage of stillness, is it separates us, or it allows the narrative voice to go quiet. It's the voice that's always telling us how dangerous the world is. And we can begin to experience something new. And we enter into this place where inner and outer worlds begin to communicate and even begin to interplay with one another. And that's when the world actually becomes magical. I mean, wouldn't you love to live in a magical world? It's amazing. It's truly wonderful. So in this, what I'd like you to do is to actually practice that. Just move into the heart by the way that I just talked about. sense the difference in feeling, this internal feeling. It's really important to understand what those markers are so that you know when your attention is in the heart as opposed to being outside. And then to go outside and to perceive the world as if the heart itself is another sense. It's a mode of perceiving the world itself. It's a sense, it's a sensory organism. So what does the world look like to you from the perspective of the heart? So practice that, and then we'll be back for our next video. I believe this one was video 4, and hopefully we'll be back for video 5. See you then.